What's up guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to teach you guys how to make your own risers with only using Serum. So let's hop straight into it. So this is the Serum patch that I made. And so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and create a new patch and get started from scratch. So I'll duplicate that, mute that, go into Serum. So starting with a fresh patch, what I like to do is with oscillator A, we're going to go ahead and bring up the unison to about 12. Whenever you're adding unison, you're adding more voices and you're spreading it out more stereo. So what we want to do is we want to drop down the detune, and we'll go down to about 0.10, and I think that would be a good place to start. Now what we want to do is go over to oscillator B, analog, basic shapes, and then go ahead and get to a square. We're going to drop the volume on the oscillator B. So the volume level all the way down. Unison, we can do about 7, and then we're going to detune that as well. Let's go with this one. We'll do about 0.05. Perfect. So with that, what we want to do is go back to oscillator A. Warp type, we're going to do FM from B. Bring that up to about 30%, and then you should be good with that. Now, after you do that, what I personally like to do is I go back to oscillator B, click on the warp type, and do bend plus. We're going to bring that all the way to 0. And now we get into our LFOs. So we're going to bring this shape over to the right, put on envelope, and put the rate at 8 bars. And also we're going to apply this LFO to our warp type on the oscillator B, and then make it go bipolar, turn it all the way up. So then that way it starts at 1 and then goes all the way to the other, and then you create a little bit of movement as the sound is progressing. So after that, go to filters, miscellaneous, combs, take your cutoff, and we can go ahead and start at 30 Hertz. And we're going to take our LFO and put it on the cutoff for that as well, and bring that down to about 30. Now with the filters, you can really play around and see what works the best. You can either do your flangers, you can go through all of these. For me personally, I like the combs. I just think it works best. It's nice and subtle, it's not too much. So that's a good place to start. And then after that, we'll go to LFO2. We'll bring this over to the first vertical line. Double click on here so we can drop that down. And we want this to be on trigger. We're going to have this about 1/8, and then we're going to delay it to about 4 bars. After that, you go ahead and bring your LFO2 to the drive of the filter, and then bring it down to about 30%, and then you'll copy and paste LFO2 to LFO3. Go over to LFO3, and then bring the rate up to 1/16, and bring the delay down to 8 bars. And then we'll do the same as LFO2. We'll go ahead and apply LFO3 to the drive, and then we'll bring that down to about 40. Now you'll hear these in motion as we start going along more inside of the tutorial, but for the first bank on the oscillators and everything, that should be about good. So let's go ahead into our FX. Let's start applying some FX. Let's do some hyperdimension. We're going to bring down the mix down to about 10%, dimension size 10%, and the mix up 10%. Everything 10%. After that, we can go ahead and apply a flanger. Make sure you're on BPM. You can play with the rate, but I just keep the rate as what it comes on. And then the mix, we're going to bring that down to 70%. After that, we'll turn on our compressor, multi-band OTT, and bring up the drive to about 7 dB. After that, let's go ahead and turn on our delay, and let's make sure it's after the compressor. Keep it on 1/4, and then this little guy, you're going to bring this down some about there, so then that way it's only getting the mid and the high end information. So that should be good for your FX. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make the whole sound change dramatically. All the magic happens in the matrix. So let's go into matrix, source, envelope 1, and then on destination go to global, master tune. And now it's going to make the type bipolar. You can play with this. For me personally, I like it just going polar, just one direction. So on the type, just click the one direction. And then amount, go ahead and start it at 30. Now, I start my amounts at 30 and then go anywhere from 30 to 50. It depends on how loud you really want it to get and how much the bend is going to increase. But for this, for right now, we'll start at 30, and then you end up with something like this. Now, one quick thing that I noticed, so in LFO2, let's go ahead and bring this decay down to 2 bars, and then LFO3 will bring this down to 4 bars. The greatest thing about making your own risers is that you can always make them in whatever key that you're using your track in. So let's say that my track is in E major. So what I can do is I can create my note on E. Now it's time to do some quick post-processing. What I like to do is I'll add a directional mixer, just kind of bring it in just a little bit so it's not too stereo, so then that way it's not phasing. I want to just bring it a little bit mono, and then we can go ahead and add a reverb. I personally like using Valhalla, but any reverb that you have that you personally like the most can work. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and bring down the mix all the way, and our decay will bring that up to about 5 seconds. After that, we want to automate the reverb, so we'll go to mix. So you automate the mix so it starts low and then goes up to about 50% all the way at the end. So then that way it's creating space and depth. The more that the sound drags on and starts to pitch bend up, your reverb is going to create this cool atmospheric space to it. Something like that. For this, I say let's bring it down to about 0.4% on the mix. Also too, I'm going to actually bring this down an octave, and I encourage you guys to experiment to see what works the best for you guys. I think that it's going a little bit, the pitch bend is going high a little too fast, so I'm going to bring this down to EC1. So afterwards, once you're done doing all that, you can go ahead and bounce this down or freeze it, however you want to call it. So I'll go over here and I'll freeze it down, riser. So that way, whenever you're making a bunch of these, that way it's not being too much on your computer, on CPU, and all that jazz. So after you bounce it down, you can go ahead and mute all this, turn it all off. And then go ahead and mute it so you know that this is the primary source of which it was made, so you can go back and make longer risers or shorter risers if you need to, or make some adjustments. So after you bounce it down, you have your file, and then what I like to do is I like to create a volume fade in, or automation, so then that way it starts quiet and it builds in volume. And now the reverb at the end I think sounds really good, and I encourage you guys to leave it because it creates this nice atmospheric and natural sound whenever you're transitioning over into the next phase. So yeah, go ahead and play with your volume, see where you want it to start coming in, how late, how soon, whatever it may be, it's all a matter of personal preference. But point being, this is basically the patch that you guys will be creating, and then go ahead and play with it a little bit, play with your oscillator type, your wavetables, maybe you want all saws, or maybe you like the sound of how a square sounds. In your filters, play with all the flangers, all the miscellaneous, see what works best for you, and also play with your master tune. This is basically the basic principle of it, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope it helps you guys out a little bit. Also, let me know down in the comments what you guys want me to do my next tutorial on, and yeah, hit that sub button if you guys haven't yet, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace!